Question: Rich Dad or Dave Ramsey? Who do you trust? Who should I trust? Rich Dad? Should I trust Rich Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, or I should trust Dave Ramsey? Personal finance influencer, apostle of money saving and debt avoidance. This is what we're going to talk about today. All right. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why I don't trust Dave Ramsey. Why I don't trust Dave Ramsey. So it's more like, should I trust my rich dad, Robert Kiyosaki, or I should trust Dave Ramsey? And I'm going to tell you why I don't trust Dave Ramsey for the most part, and why sometimes I trust him, and why sometimes I trust the rich dad too. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, all right, so Dave Ramsey is one of the finest personal finance influencers in America. You know, he's trusted by millions of people, and he's been doing this for years. And what does Dave Ramsey talks about? What does he talk about? Dave Ramsey talks about avoiding debt. Debt including student loans, credit card debt, car loan debt, and other types of debt. He's an evangelist. He's a prophet for debt avoidance. You avoid these debt as much as you can, you know, and if you can, minimize it to the barest bones, you know, the barest minimum. That's what Dave Ramsey is talking about. Student debt, avoid it. Credit card debt, avoid it. Car loans, avoid it. Other types of debt, avoid it. Now, I just received an email from Dave Ramsey. He's talking about all these things, and in many ways, it just incredible ways of communicating that he has, which most people have been following for years and years now. He also talks about, Dave Ramsey also talks about budgeting, how to budget, you know, budgeting your money, you know, based on your income. All right. Now he also talks about living within your means. Dave Ramsey also talks about living within your means. You know, make sure to live within your means. You know, and there are even times that he talks about coupons, clipping coupons, and saving money in other ways, in other creative ways. All right. Now he also talks about saving money, especially for your emergency, you know, savings. Retirement savings. He talks about all these things, and a lot of these things are amazing. But I don't trust him when it comes to other areas, and I'm going to explain to you why. So now there are times that I trust Rich Dad, Robert Kiyosaki more, and there are times that I don't trust Dave Ramsey. At the same time, there are times that I trust Dave Ramsey, and let me explain to you why. In life, there is nothing like one size fits all. Different people have different goals in life. Different people have different stages of their lives. For some people, there is good debt and bad debt. And that is what Rich Dad talks about. He talks about good debt. Times that a debt is good, and times that a debt is bad. That's why Rich Dad talks about assets and liabilities. And what does he talk about? Assets and liabilities. What does he talk about? Rich Dad says that assets put money in your pocket, and liabilities take money away from your pocket. Let me repeat that. Rich Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, teaches that assets put money in your pocket. They bring money to you month after month or time after time. But liabilities do take away money from your pocket, draining money away from you. All right? So there are times that debt is good, and there are times that debt is bad. So in life, in so many, like I'll give you an example. In the military, they have different strategies. They have offensive strategies and defensive strategies. There are times that militaries do deploy defensive strategy, and there are times that they employ or deploy offensive strategies. It depends on the time, the stage, on the terrain. It depends on the stage in the battle. So there are times that it makes sense to avoid debt. There are times it makes sense to minimize or completely eliminate student loan, credit card, car loans. And there are times that it makes sense to save. But at the same time, there are times that it makes sense to borrow, and borrow. Especially if you're borrowing to buy an asset that produces an income. And this is why I don't trust Dave Ramsey. There are times that I trust Dave Ramsey, of course, but there are times that I don't trust him. And now I'm going to tell you why there are times that it makes sense. Of course, one size does not fit all. Like I said, one size doesn't fit all in life. Everybody is different. Everybody's goal is different. Everybody has stages, different stages in their lives. And defensive techniques that we can deploy. There are offensive techniques that we can deploy. So when does it make sense to borrow a lot of money? When does it make sense? I'm going to give you examples. All right. And in that case, in the case of borrowing, when it makes sense, when it comes to borrowing, when it does make sense, I do not trust Dave Ramsey and I do not like his ideas and I stay away from his ideas. Now, let me explain to you why sometimes it makes sense to borrow and borrow and borrow. I'm going to give you examples. All right, let's say that you want to buy a rental property, a 3-family rental property that you want to buy the house, real estate, you want to buy the real estate, you want to rent it out. In that case, it makes a lot of sense to borrow a lot of money from a bank, especially when the value of the house is higher than your loan. You have a lower loan to equity ratio. So you're going to buy this property, rental property, 3-family. You are going to a bank to borrow money and you're going to use this money to buy the property. And what does the property do for you? Especially if you buy it right and it's in a good location, it's a good property, and the property, let's assume that the property is great and it's a great property and it's going to earn you passive income. In that case, it makes sense to borrow money and borrow a lot of money. That is one. Let me give you another example. Now, if you're going to buy dividend earning stocks, and especially if the stocks have plunged and you are buying a stock at a huge discount, or you're buying a high quality stock like Apple or Verizon or JP Morgan stock that pay dividend like clockwork, in that case, it depends on your borrowing terms, or your loan terms, or your credit terms. But for the most part, it makes sense to buy stocks, dividend earning stocks with a loan. And that's what a lot of people on Wall Street are doing. Especially you buy dividend earning stocks and you buy high quality stocks with credit or debt, especially if your borrowing costs are very, very low. In that case, you earning the profit from the dividend, your dividend will be higher than the cost of your loan. In that case, it makes sense to borrow money and invest in stocks, in high quality. Remember, it's not penny stocks or kind of suspicious stocks or anything like. You buy the highest quality stocks or ETFs in the land, like Apple, like SPY, like QQQ, or like TQQQ. In that case, it makes a lot of sense to borrow money. And in this case, that is why I don't trust Dave Ramsey. In this case, I'm not using Dave Ramsey's ideas, and I'm going to use Rich Dad's ideas. I'm investing in high quality dividend producing assets. Now, let me give you another example. If you buy a car, and that car, you're going to be using that car, for fun and running around, and that car is not paying you any income, not bringing in any income. In that case, that car is a liability. But what about if you buy a car and you use that car for Uber or Lyft? or Turo. In this case, the car is a liability because the car produces income. Let's say you have two cars that you buy on credit, and then you hiring some people to drive this car, and that car earns income from Uber or Lyft or Turo. So now you have a fleet of cars that produce income, that earn income like clockwork. In this case, that debt is a very passive debt. It's a good debt. It's great debt. It's beneficial debt. It's high quality income producing debt, because now that debt has turned around and is earning you income like clockwork, month after month after month, or time after time after time. So in this case, where you have the opportunity to use debt, especially if you can get the credit or the debt for very, very cheap, rates, especially these days, because of interest rates near zero, debt is very, very cheap. This is a good time to borrow money because the cost of money is really, really low. In this case, you buy income producing assets like cars, a fleet of cars that you can use in a wise way, in a good way, in a very productive way for Uber or Lyft or Turo. In this case, debt is your servant. In this case, debt is your servant. It means that debt is working for you. Dirt is fighting in your corner. That is why in this case, I don't trust Dave Ramsey. And I mean that. Now, let's look at another scenario that you can use debt to buy an income producing asset. All right, how about franchise? If you're going to buy a franchise like McDonald's franchise, in that case you could go borrow a lot of money and use the money to buy a McDonald's franchise, especially if that franchise is in a good location. They say location. If that franchise, McDonald's franchise, is in a good location, has good foot traffic, like I go to McDonald's almost every day, so I understand the mechanics of McDonald's. If you are able to get a good McDonald's franchise in a good neighborhood, in a good location where a lot of people come to McDonald's and buy food, they drive by, they drive through, and they buy. You have people lining up, cars queuing and lining up, trying to buy your food from McDonald's franchise. In that case, it makes a lot of sense to borrow money and buy McDonald's franchise, because then it's an asset. Your franchise is an asset. And especially if you're able to keep your debt to equity ratio at the lowest point. Let's say your debt to equity ratio is 0.2. all right, so it means that this is just an example. It means that your debt level is like 20% of your equity. In that case, you are on top of the world because you have more assets than liabilities. You have more equity than debt. So let's say the worst comes to the worst and you have to pay off this debt. You can either sell this asset, if you have to. I don't believe in selling great assets, but if you have to sell it for emergency reasons or for some other reason, if you have to sell it, then you can sell the asset, and then you use just about 10%, 20%, in this case 20% of your equity or the money from the sale to pay off debt. So you are debt free and you still have more money left. So in this case, where you are able to use debt to buy great income producing assets like McDonald's franchise, it makes a lot of sense to borrow money. In this case, this is why I don't trust Dave Ramsey's advice in this case. All right. Now, there are other things that you can also do with debt. Like you can buy a website. Let's say you found a great website. This is another example where it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to borrow money and invest in income producing assets. All right. Let's say you found a good website. And this website has good traffic. A lot of people come to this website, and then the website produces income month after month like clockwork. In this case, it makes a lot of sense to buy this website with debt. You can go to the bank and borrow money and buy this website. In this case, debt is your servant. The debt is working for you. Debt is good. This is good debt. In this case, I trust my rich dad, Robert Kiyosaki. I trust Robert Kiyosaki, my rich dad, more than Dave Ramsey. That's why I don't trust Dave Ramsey in this case, because I'm able to borrow money from banks or from other good creditors and then invest this money into this website. And then I can earn passive income with this website month after month after month, or day after day after day, like clockwork. This is why I don't trust Dave Ramsey. All right. So to recap, there are times that Dave Ramsey makes a lot of sense. There are times that I trust him, and there are times that I don't trust him. Of course, there are times that you need to, especially credit card, unnecessary debt or liability, producing debt, or debts that choke you and just strangle you and hold you down. These are bad debts, liabilities. In that case, avoid this debt as much as possible, or bring them to the lowest minimum under control. In that case, I trust Dave Ramsey. And I must say that, Dave Ramsey is one of my mentors. I really, really admire him. I really, really, really admire him. He's a wonderful, wonderful man that I can't say how much I admire him. I can't say how much wonderful he is. He's helped millions of people. I've learned a lot from him. So I really admire him. At the same time, I admire my rich dad, So both men, there are times that I admire both of them, but there are times that I don't trust any of them. It depends on my situation. It depends on the situation. There is nothing like one size fits all. Everybody's station in life is different. Everybody's goal in life is different. Different goals, different people, different times, different goals, different objectives. So there are times that you have to be offensive, take offensive strategies. There are times that you have to be defensive. So it depends on your station in life. It depends on your goals and the type of person you are, your objectives. It depends on the type of investment, if it's good debt or bad debt, or if it's a liability or an asset. So this is why there are times that I don't trust Dave Ramsey, and these are the reasons why I've explained to you. If you can buy income producing assets, you can get into good debt that help you to buy great assets that can give you passive income and earn you passive income month after month after month, or day after day after day, being real estate or dividend producing stock, or investing in Uber in case of cars, or buying websites, digital assets, digital real estate. In that case, I trust my rich dad, Robert Kiyosaki, more than my other mentor, Dave Ramsey. In that case, I don't trust Dave Ramsey. I trust my rich dad better. So I hope you like this video. Subscribe, like it, comment. Let's do this together. Thank you very much. I love all of you. Bye.